This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Tim, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Stephen St. George, and Lindsay Trebet. Thank you for making this show possible. And if you would like to help support the show, check out www.wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the Patreon link. It's only $3 a month, and you get extra content all month long.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I am joined once again by the Snake Brothers.
That's right.
How's
Glad
it going,
to be here.
my man?
Thanks, Seriah.
I enjoy having you on more rather than less.
It's always fun. It's always fun to be on your show. I am a little sick, so people might recognize that I have stuffed nose. Sorry about that.
I'm in perfect health.
Kyle's in perfect health, so I'll let him do all the talking.
As opposed to last week when you were in horrible health.
That's right. Yeah.
So now you just have a sniffle.
That's right. Just a sniffle.
So because we did originally plan to do this a week ago, and you were like, "So I'm sick."
Yes, very sick. Extremely sick.
All right. And if anyone doesn't know, you do have a podcast called the Brothers of the Serpent Podcast.
That's right.
And it is
available
excellent.
Anywhere a podcast can be found. Thank you.
Currently going through the Book of the Damned.
That's right.
I saw that. Haven't listened to them yet, but I saw that. I was really happy you're doing that. That's a cool book.
Oh, wait, if we're on the radio, it's the Book of the Gosh Darn It.
That's right.
No, damned is fine.
Okay.
Radio's not that bad. So anyway, someone had sent me this Reddit link a while ago. And
Reddit.
I love Reddit. I really do. And the thing is, it showed up in my Reddit feed like the next day anyway. But it was this guy who has since deleted his Reddit, unfortunately. But he says, I attempted to solve these 13 missing 411 cases, and this is what I found. So we're going to discuss this. He actually has a whole bunch of them he's looked into. And to me, this is important because, like the first time I had David on, I said, a lot of these cases I think are going to have very basic, prosaic explanations. And it's important to weed those out and see what you have left. And
I agree with that. What did he say?
He didn't disagree with that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a matter of access to information. And, a lot of these are older cases. You said they were a bunch of them in the row in the Eastern United States book, right?
That's right. So I have my from this post you're talking about, the guy lists 13 cases that he looked into. One of them is from North America and beyond, but the other 12 are from the Eastern United States book, which is I think considered basically the second book.
Yes.
Or I've always considered the Western United States to be the first one.
And
they're all basically from page 28 to 32. So that should tell you in and of itself that these are cases with very little data.
Yeah.
Most of them are only a paragraph or two.
And when I went through the books, my question is, why is he putting in cases that had so little data?
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Okay, I haven't even read the books, but I thought the point was that he was looking for specific things that, to categorize them together.
Yeah. Criteria.
Yeah, and so if it met the criteria, put it in the book, right? Even if it doesn't have very much data.
But a lot of them didn't have enough data to even tell if they met the criteria. It was just that this person disappeared, basically.
Yeah, so in this list, starts on page 28 with Riley. Isn't that right? Are you looking at the article right now? Yeah.
Yeah, Riley amsbau?
Amsbau, something.
1902.
Yeah. So two things I noticed going through this is a lot of these cases are extremely old.
Yes.
1950s and before. One of them isn't, or at least maybe... Yeah, one of them is from 2011. The other thing that I noticed is, like I already said, there's only a couple of paragraphs. But what seems to be the common theme in all these very short ones is that there was just no trace discovered of the person.
Right.
So what this guy, this researcher who posted this on Reddit, has found is he's used more modern tools. Like if you read the beginning of Western United States, David sort of lists the stuff that he used, and one of the things he mentions is the New York Times archives, which he said that at the time that he was doing the research, they had posted pretty much everything they had all the way back to 1900. And then he said that he was also looking, manually looking through other periodicals where he could find information.
Okay.
But since then, a lot of this stuff has been indexed, and the archivists that are working on this go backwards in time.
Sure. Which makes sense.
Yes, and it makes it a lot. So, like, you could go through with, and I'm going to do this if Kyle and I do future shows on missing 411 stuff, because I was inspired by what the guy found. I'm like, wow, so I can go through and pick out cases, and then I can probably go to these newspaper archive websites, and with just keywords like the person's name and other things, and maybe the location, find more information.
Yeah, yeah,
which would be great.
And I did ask this guy if he wanted to come on and do a show, but he didn't actually want to be on the air. But he did tell me I had permission to use any of his research.
Okay.
So, and like I said, since then he has deleted his Reddit. I don't know why, but the stuff's still up, still posted. This one in particular came out of High Strangeness, but I think most of his stuff is posted in the Missing 411 groups.
So the first book had 411 cases. Is that right?
The first two, Western and Eastern together. It's 411 cases.
He released them at the same time, but I think the Western one is considered the first one.
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like the Western one has the weirder cases than the Eastern one.
It has what?
The weirder cases.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Eastern one, if anyone's interested, Kyle and I did 2 episodes on this a while back. You can find it, our most recent 2 411 episodes. What I did with the Eastern United States is I went through and found all the cases, not all of them, but a lot of the weird cases where children vanished and then were found alive.
Yeah.
Those are the strangest cases to me. They're really interesting.
Well, especially when they come back saying like a bear took care of me, like happened a few years ago with that Kyle. What was his name? No, Casey.
Yeah, Casey. That's right.
Something Hathworth or something like that.
Yeah. Or when they just don't. They've been gone for 7 days and they don't remember anything.
Yeah. Yeah,
definitely. And they seem to have been fed, and it's a strange thing.
The problem is it doesn't prove that something paranormal happens, but
of course not.
It is a mystery as to how they survived.
Right.
And that Casey, case was a perfect example of that, because they searched for him, they couldn't find him. He should have died. There's no way he should have died of hypothermia, and instead he walked out without any problems and said, "Oh, a bear took care of me." It's like, what?
Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, those are the genuinely weird cases.
Right. And then there are other cases in the books that have pages and pages and pages of detail, often because Paulides was either, like he'll say in there, he was able to get information from people who were involved in the search, or he was able to get files from the park. And those cases are also very interesting. You know, but I guess the question that gets raised by people because of the things that this guy is showing in his post on Reddit is David really giving everybody all the information he has, or is he trying to make this look more mysterious than it is?
Right.
That's obviously the question that gets raised immediately.
Or is he a bad researcher?
Yeah. Is he bad at research? Yeah.
So how many cases is he allowed to have not quite done enough research on
to know one way or the other? Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, is it 10% that he didn't do like enough research, or go back after, like, I don't know how long it took him to do the research, but if you do a bunch of research and then you're going to put out a book, but it's been 10 years since you started, are you required to go back and redo more research on every case? Or where do you draw the line, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, so what's the publication date on the first book?
2011 for both of them. I checked.
Okay. So if you figure there's how many cases? Almost 1,000 cases in both books?
But the Western and Eastern have the original 411 cases.
Okay. That's right. So, I mean, that's a lot of cases for somebody to continually go back and check. I do not expect David to do that unless something big broke on a more recent case. But these old cases, I have no expectation that it would not be reasonable to expect David to look at all those cases like every year.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
now, if there was a because he's gotten so many people interested in this is part of the reason why this Reddit post has happened, because so many people are interested. Now there's a lot of people out there willing to do that kind of research. And that's great because, like you said earlier, when you were talking to Dave, when you had him on, is that, it would be good to winnow out the cases that don't belong in the mysterious category.
Right. And I mean, honestly, I don't know that there's one thing happening. I mean, there's almost never one thing happening, first of all. But even if we just end up with the weird cases, I think there's still likely to be multiple causes for them.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So how many cases has this researcher dug up more information on?
I would have to dig around what I saved. He put up a whole list in the missing 411 thing of probably another 20 or 30 cases.
Okay.
And is that from just the first 2 books or all of them? Because
I don't know. I'll look it up if we get through these.
Yeah, because I think there's more than 1,000 now with all the books. So.
Oh, there have to be. Absolutely have to be.
Yeah.
And there is, in one of Dave's books, he does correct some of the cases that, and I think it might have been the 3rd book, he corrects at the end some of the cases where more info has come about. But even with the newer cases, I mean, it's so much data to go through. It's not a reasonable thing to expect David to be able to do all that and still come up with new content.
Yeah, and also I've seen corrections on his website. They may not end up in a future book.
Right. Yes.
But he'll post a little thing on his website like old case from this book, new information was found or discovered or whatever. I don't that doesn't mean that he's going to do it for every case.
Right. Well, someone may have told him, "Hey, this was solved."
Yeah.
His website though, it looks like a GeoCities site from the 90s.
Yes, it's extremely Paulides.
It doesn't even come up right on a phone. You look at it, you're like, it just runs off the side.
That's my favorite thing about it. It brings back old memories.
Oh. All right. So this guy, in this one, he mostly focused on the farmers in the Eastern U.S. book. And he goes through, and I'll try and post links to all this stuff so people can read the full thing. But he's talking about David's ideas of why these people might have disappeared. David writes in the Eastern U.S. book, page 26, it's difficult to imagine what could have gone so horribly wrong that families and neighbors couldn't find the vast majority of these hard-working people. So the first one, as you said, is Riley amsbau. Amsbaughh, and he disappeared in 1902. 55 years old, went missing in Ohio. And David's entry, David describes him as a man of habit, and he was expected back at his home for lunch, but he never returned. Paulides says witnesses had seen amsbau in his cornfield and at a berry patch. And of course, berry patches are one of the things he's looking at being a common factor.
That's right.
And the interesting thing about that is that it's also a common factor in Fae encounters. The missing 411 stuff and the old Fae legends do have some overlap, and that's very interesting to me. But few other details were available. The local sheriff did join the search and stated that the 75 people had secured the woods and were looking for Riley, but no clues had been found. So he says, under the original sources, News Journal of the 25th of July, 1902, published quite a lengthy article on the disappearance, stating he was a very well-to-do farmer, and the house had been burglarized in 1901, so foul play was one of the main theories. There was, however, a second competing theory, the article states. Another supposition is that Mr. Amsbau may have had sunstroke, and having become demented, wandered off. It turns out that days after he went missing, Amsbau was found alive. The Times Recorder from July 28, 1902 states that Riley Amsbau, I'm going to say it different every single time. The wealthy farmer who disappeared from his home last Thursday was found this morning. He had become temporarily demented and walked to Mount Vernon. He returned during the night and was found by the family today at the roadside.
Temporarily demented.
Yeah. So clear. I mean, he was 55, so he wasn't that old.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're out working in the field, sunstroke's always a possibility. Dehydration's always a possibility.
Yep.
But it doesn't.
is Ohio.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Is it hot there?
Depends. I mean, it was July, so yeah.
Yeah, July. I like the temporarily demented thing because it does fit with some of the other cases that you find in the 411 books where people seem to randomly lose their minds and then they come back in a daze. Doesn't make it paranormal.
Right.
But it is weird.
And you know,
and then of course the berry patch.
Yeah, exactly. There was a case that Steph Young covered where this guy was like, I don't know, sitting in a field or something, and this trucker drives into the field, stops his truck, walks off into the woods, and he's never found again. But while he's doing this, he's saying something like, the voices are making me do this, or something like that. Like, I don't remember the exact details right now, but it's just kind of like one of those, like, what's happening here? Is it schizophrenia? Is someone messing with him? Are we seeing some kind of technology?
Yeah. And you're right. This one does have Fae-ish.
Yeah.
You know, the whole idea of they get called or whatever. What would a modern, more scientific civilization call that? You know, it was temporary dementia.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing to that Fae stuff.
Right.
We don't see any connections by actually taking it, you know, without ridiculing it.
Right.
All right. So the next one was E.C. Jones from 1903. 24 years old, went missing in
let me stop you there. Let me stop you there because, like, this is the first one where I noticed that in the book it's listed as age at disappearance is unknown. So clearly, this researcher, whoever he is, was able to find more information than Dave had or that he put in the book. I thought when I was looking at this and I was like, okay, in Paulides' book it says age unknown. To me, that seems like he just didn't have all the data.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He writes that
is the implication that he purposefully withheld information?
That's the implication you get from reading the post that Seriah is going through. Yes.
Okay.
The person is basically saying either that Dave's a bad researcher or that he's purposefully misleading people.
Right.
That's basically what you get from it. And all the comments are the same. They kind of agree with that.
And you know, it looks like that when you read these, but as until you pointed out, because I was thinking that too. I'm like, man, I don't know what other explanation there could be. But as you pointed out, the explanation is the technology available.
Yeah. I'll stand by that, except that I want to know, I would like to find out, when were these made available? Like, you know, were these extended resources available before the publishing of the book during the research? And how, you know, that's a good question.
Well, they might have been available, but harder to get.
Yeah.
They weren't. I mean, maybe they didn't even show up in a Google search or whatever. You know.
Yeah, and so some of these, like newspaper.com or whatever, I think you can. I'll have to look into it more, but I think you can. There are certain newspaper archiving sites where you can actually purchase a membership. And then you have access to everything and all the search engines. Right. And what would be interesting to find out is try to find these same articles that this guy found and then see if there's a date of digital archival. That would help.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And
if
then
that's included.
Yes, if that's included. Because this guy did good research and he posted in the post, if people go look at it, if you follow the link that Seriah will put in the show notes, the guy includes the images of the newspaper articles.
Right.
But not links to where he found them. So,
well, I mean, reasonably, it seems like that's what you need is the proof that there's the newspaper article.
Yeah, I'm not saying what I'm saying is I wanted the links because I wanted to go see and find out when this was archived. Yeah,
I totally understand, and he does post what newspaper it's from, what date, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so, I mean, I guess hypothetically, you just look for that, and you should be able to find something.
Yeah, and what I noticed, unless I missed some. But to me, it was like clear that the stuff that this researcher has found are from completely different newspapers than the sources that David lists, if he lists one in the book.
Right. So this one, E.C. Jones, 24 years old, went missing in Ohio. David Paulides writes, the Pocahontas County Sun newspaper describes another mysterious disappearance of a farmer on November 12th. E.C. Jones was a man married only a month when he kissed his new bride goodbye and headed into his cornfield for work. At 3 p.m., Jones had not returned from the field, so his wife requested one of the assistants to search the farm for Jones. A search by the local community failed to find any sign of the local farmer. Original sources, he lists, why would a newly married man disappear? The answer is E.C. Jones was jealous, so he decided to leave his wife. His explanation letter is reprinted below. 2 days before Jones disappeared, his wife wanted to go to a neighbor's house to bring home her sisters who had spent the evening there, but Jones refused to drive her there. Jones' wife then said that she would get another driver, and this made him jealous. The headline of the Courier from December 7, 1903 reads, Young Jones heard from, Webster County farmer writes to wife from Minneapolis, left because he was jealous of his wife, says he will never come back unless forgiven. Like, what the hell?
He's not going to come back unless she forgives him.
The day Jones went missing, he had casually mentioned he might be late for dinner. When his neighbors found out about the letter, they were quite angry because they had spent 3 days looking for him.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. In the book, which again, this entry in Missing 411 is like one paragraph.
Right.
It said there's one part in there that guy left out where it says the assistant found. Okay, so she sends the assistants out to look for Jones when he doesn't come home from the farm.
Mm-hmm.
Says the assistant found Jones's team, quote, wandering the field with one tug broken and one ear of corn in the wagon box, unquote.
Okay.
So if he really, like, did he fly into a jealous rage?
Maybe.
And break the tongue? I don't know. Interesting.
And as you pointed, like, Dave's source was the Pocahontas County Sun newspaper. And he found this in the Courier.
Yeah.
And okay, that's also the Courier. And then the last part was from the Evening Times Republican.
Right. Different sources.
So did David have access to these sources? We don't know
because,
there's now, again, we don't have enough information.
Right. But again, the case is from 1903. It's pretty old.
Right. So the information...
Is that the one where the letter is included?
Yes. Yep.
Because if you read the letter, when you open the picture of the newspaper report, they actually quote a lot of the letter, and I did not understand it at all. Did you read that where he's calling her bug?
Oh, I did not. Let me see if I can blow it up here.
The newspaper print, like, it actually prints a large portion of this guy's personal letter to his wife in the newspaper.
Yeah,
and then at the end of it, it says people who aren't from here are not going to understand this letter at all. And I was like, you're right. I do not understand anything that he's trying to say.
Dear wife, well, Bud, I suppose you are satisfied now.
Yeah.
You can get your own driver. Oh, Bud, I wish to God I would have been killed that Sunday night before I got to town. I know that I am to blame more than you, but what you said about the driver and that night after we got home, I couldn't stand it. Bud, I know that I've done foolish, but I've done foolish, but I never thought until I had gone. Right. Okay. I tried to get you over the telephone when I was at Hampton, but they wouldn't connect the bell on the Martin line. This is just stuff we don't deal with, I think.
Yeah.
Bud, will you put my clothes in the telescope and keep them until I write for them? I go from here in the morning, I don't know where, and take good care of my wedding clothes, as I will never have no other. No other woman can be the same as you have been to me. I am going to be true to you as when I was there. Don't think I am going to be ornery and drink. You have learned me better. I am going to live up to you. Take that money, Bud, of ours, and use it to your best advantage. Only please don't use it in getting a new driver. Well, I will close as I am quite sick and can't write anymore. I won't say goodbye. Bud, as something tells me we shall meet again. If I thought you would forgive my mad act, it would be soon. Until then, Bud, farewell, my dear lost wife, Earl.
It's weird that he calls her Bud.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It might be a colloquialism.
Yeah,
I'll say.
And then it says, P.S. Bud, you please write to Edna, Jonah's sister, and tell her how I treated you.
So weird. This is strange.
What was his wife?
How did they get permission to publish the entire letter in the newspaper?
It was 1902. They probably didn't really need it. She probably gave it to them.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's like, here's what that asshole said to me.
Yeah, exactly.
You can print it, Bud, if you want.
The letter is rather unintelligible to people outside of the Jones family. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
You should pack your wedding clothes in a telescope. Just sounds like a great idea.
Okay. So the third one here is Edward Gerke, or Gerke, Gerke. 1918, age unknown, went missing in Wisconsin.
Now, this one is weird.
Is this the one I'm thinking it is?
Yes. This one is
yes. Yeah, this one is weird. So David writes, Gerke got a 6 a.m. call to start his chores and went into the field Sunday morning to work his newly purchased land near Bear Creek. He didn't return for lunch, and the family became concerned. Midday Sunday, the family went to the field and found Edward lying in a ditch in his pasture with a broken neck and sand in his mouth. They also thought that some of his clothes had been partially burned. The coroner reported that lightning possibly caused Edward's death, but there was never conclusive proof as to how his neck was broken. So he says original sources that he found, lightning was mentioned as a possible cause of death, but a Dr. Sheehy explained Gerke, and he discovered Gerke's clothing was saturated with either gasoline or kerosene. The article continues, Monroe County authorities cannot explain the presence of this. Authorities decided not to investigate the case further, but a couple of weeks later, a coroner's jury said Gerke's death was caused by lightning. David Paulides fails to mention the kerosene gasoline detail. Please note, if Gerke was hit by lightning, it is not a missing 411 case, and if foul play was involved, Gerke's clothing was drenched in gasoline kerosene. It's not a missing 411 case.
Yeah. So in the book, the researcher does list pretty much everything Dave says except this part. It says Toma police were called and investigated the case. They were completely baffled about how Edward's neck was broken and how he got sand in his mouth.
Yeah.
The case was then turned over to Monroe County officials in Sparta, who were to conduct an autopsy and further follow-up. And then Dave does report that the coroner reported that lightning possibly caused Edward's death, but there was never conclusive proof as to how his neck was broken. And yes, so he doesn't say anything about kerosene or gas or whatever.
Right. And David took his from, does it say where David got his info from?
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Because this guy got it from the Shullsburg Pick and Gad.
Nice.
But I mean, this is just, like, you look at this and you're like, What the hell?
Yeah. So this is my scenario. Somebody wanted to kill this guy and doused him in kerosene, and then he got struck by lightning and they ran away.
But you still have the broken. Well, see, David says the broken neck, but in this and in these articles, it doesn't mention the broken neck or the sand in his mouth.
Yeah. So Dave must have a different source.
No, it does say his neck was broken and his clothes burned. Okay, there it is.
Yeah.
Shortly after Gerke left his farmhouse, a severe electrical storm came by, and it is thought by District Attorney Abel that the farm was struck by a bolt. But that doesn't explain why he was covered in kerosene.
Yeah.
Unless he was just having a really bad day.
Maybe he was carrying a can of kerosene. I don't know.
I mean, they would have found a can of kerosene.
You would think.
Unless it exploded when he got hit by lightning and just, I don't know. It's hard to figure out.
Or it hit the can.
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, I've worked on a farm quite a bit, and it's not completely unusual that you get like diesel or some fuel all over you because of something.
Yeah, you might spill it accidentally.
Yep.
And then get struck by lightning.
Yeah, they couldn't even tell if it was gasoline or kerosene.
Yeah. Which seems
by
to be
that time, most of the volatiles would have been evaporated, and he would have just had like an oil slick that might have had a smell or something.
Yeah.
I wonder if getting struck by lightning could create something like that.
No, I don't know.
That's a good question.
Maybe he was like drinking lots of liquor, and then he got struck by lightning, and he smelled like gasoline after that.
Well, based on the Book of the Damned, I'd say the gasoline came down out of the sky with the lightning.
Oh, there you go. I mean, regardless, this guy had a bad day.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a strange case. I mean, it's strange that it's missing 411 when he wasn't really missing.
Yeah.
In the first place. He didn't come home, but I mean, if you're dead, you don't come home.
Right.
That, then you go and find the person on their own property.
I think that's to me, when I read through the way Dave has it here, Paulides has it in the book, is what he finds interesting is the broken neck and the sand in his mouth. Yeah.
like a strange. Yeah.
I wish we knew where he
But
got
I mean,
that.
if he's in a ditch, and just depending, I mean, this is where details are important. Like how much sand was in his mouth?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, was it the amount of sand you could get in your mouth from like an animal kicking sand? Like if he was following a cow or a horse or something and they kick, or was it full
Right.
of sand?
Or
Yeah,
did he fall face first into a ditch?
Yeah,
Then the sand got
would
in his mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Which seems like if the ditch was sandy, then they wouldn't have been questioning like why he had sand in his mouth.
Yeah. And then other questions are, were there footprints around? Like, why didn't they think it was a murder?
Because it's weird. Like, that's not how you murder someone, you know?
You've never murdered somebody by striking them with lightning?
I think that goes way back in time to like the Greek gods.
Well, I guess God is
Clearly, this
God
man had
murdered him.
sinned.
So yeah,
But I just what I mean is there were no other footprints around him. There wasn't a sign of a struggle. Like if he's in a ditch, like did they check the grounds? Like that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
And if a person gets struck by lightning, do they fall over dead immediately, or do they have a seizure? Maybe that's how he got sand in his mouth.
I mean, some people survive lightning strikes too.
Yeah,
So I mean, it's not like lightning strikes do this.
yeah,
But I mean, the presence of a kerosene or some type of fuel and burnt clothes seems to go together. You
Yeah, it
don't
does,
need
yeah.
lightning.
right.
True,
So why did they
true.
decide lightning?
So it's like he could have gotten gasoline all over himself when he caught his clothes on fire, because maybe he was like pouring gasoline on a, I don't know. And then it somehow caught on fire and he burnt some of his clothes and in the meantime, like splashed gasoline on himself or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, if he burst into flames by accident and then he dives to
And
the
then
ground,
and then he
to
dives
roll and he
rolls
breaks his neck.
Yeah.
That seems more likely than a lightning strike to me. That's why I want to know where the lightning comes from.
So it comes from shortly after Girk left his farmhouse, a severe electrical storm came up, and it is thought by District Attorney Abel that the farm was struck by a bolt.
yeah,
But yeah, you're right. It may not have had anything to do with it.
yeah,
The body was saturated, so it wasn't a pool. It was saturated with either gasoline or kerosene. Broken neck
It
and
seems
burned clothing was caused by the lightning.
It seems likely that he caught on fire and, did the whole duck and roll thing and ended up breaking his neck
Yeah.
and getting sand in his mouth.
yeah.
That
Having
makes
nothing to do with lightning.
And then
Yeah.
he got struck by lightning.
And then the lightning came.
again having a bad
Confused
day.
everyone.
Do you want to read the next one?
I can read the next one out of the book, and then you can go with what the guy has in the article.
Okay, that works.
Bernice Price.
Yeah.
That's right. Isn't that the next one? Yeah. There's just one short paragraph. It says missing in 1923 from Ahwahnee. Is that it? California?
Yeah, this just says missing in California.
Okay, yeah. Age at disappearance, Paulides listed as unknown. Does the researcher have the age there?
18.
Right. Okay. Miss Price was a new wife living at the J.J. McKirk Ranch near Ahwahnee. She was staying with her husband at the ranch when she mysteriously disappeared on Monday evening. The ranch sits at the foothills at 2,400 foot elevation of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Searchers believe she may have walked into the woods and become lost. Price was never found. That's all that's in the book.
Okay, so his newspaper articles. Does it say where Paulides got his stuff from?
It doesn't.
No. So the original sources he has here are Oakland Tribune. So the newspaper article, wife of Ahwahnee farmer disappears. Mrs. Bernice Price, 18, has disappeared from the J.J. McKirk Ranch near here Monday night and has not been heard from since. She was with her husband on the ranch and was recuperating from a nervous collapse, it is said. Ahwahnee residents fear she may have wandered into the high hills and become lost. So that is from the Oakland Tribune, the 22nd of March, 1923, and the Fresno Morning Republican from the 27th of March says, wife goes to Oregon home. Wife clears mystery at Madeira. The mysterious disappearance of Mrs. F.W. Price from Nippapawasee has been cleared in a telegram from Constable O.H. Robinson of the 11th District of Powers, Oregon. The telegram received here by Sheriff J.H. Barnett states Bernice Price is with her father at Powers, Oregon, sick, frightened, and afraid of her husband, who she declares threatened to kill her. The telegram says Mrs. Price does not want to see her husband again and ends he had better keep away from Powers. According to the story, Price told Madera County officials after the disappearance of his wife, he had gone to Fresno for truck supplies and on returning found his wife gone. As far as he knew, Price reported they had always been happy and that their home conditions, he thought, were pleasant to both of them.
Huh.
So, yeah. But again, this is off of 2 different newspapers he found this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you're right where, it's probably a lot easier to search in 2021, 2022 than it was in 2011 to find this stuff.
Yeah. Still important to do the work, though.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
good. Yeah. So that one sounds like what? Just a classic, like she's actually being abused.
Yeah.
And he's saying, oh, everything's fine to the authorities. Reports her missing, but which is interesting. Does that happen? I guess it does.
Yeah, if he didn't realize anything was wrong.
Well, I mean, if she was terrified of him, like he threatened to kill her, I don't know.
Maybe he didn't feel that was out of line. Who knows?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, abusive people can do things and not think of the.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I'm saying. So it's like he's abusive. Like what you get from this, at least from her end of the story from Oregon, is that she ran from him because he had threatened to kill her. So that makes sense.
And how many cases? And I had asked the guy. I don't think we mentioned this in the beginning. I had asked the guy, but he had already deleted his Reddit, how many cases he found where there wasn't additional info. Now, you said a lot of these are right in a row.
Yes.
And how many in between those were not, does he not mention?
So far, these have all been right in a row.
Okay. But overall, of the 13...
there's at least 1 or 2 times where he skips stuff, goes to the next case, because maybe he couldn't find anything on that one. I don't know. He doesn't say.
Yeah, because that's also important information. Like, what about the other ones? Are you finding that these were reported accurately?
Yeah. Well, or just like, is it accurate, or did he just not find any more information?
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
And yes, and then like I would be interested to see if he does deeper research into some of the cases with lots of more data. Can he find other data that says this kind of calls into question this part, or how this is implied by the stuff that Paulides has.
When I had Steve Stockton on back in December, I think, he's talking about one of the cases that's in, I want to say, the Western U.S. book. I can't remember the woman's name, but there's someone who's done a lot more research, and it looks like, and it's one of the weirder cases in that book, but they've come to the conclusion that it is almost certainly that she was abducted by people, not aliens.
Yeah. Who was the other guy? Thomas Spriggs.
Yes. Yeah.
You had him on, and so did we. He did some great extra research in this, but he was looking at overall patterns of movement.
And that's the question, like, how do these patterns change if we remove all these cases?
Yeah, right.
So the next one is William Pitzenbarger. These are not common names anymore. 1931, 61 years old, went missing in Ohio. Do you want to, how long is the thing David writes?
It's a couple of paragraphs. You want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
On August 7th, William walked across his cornfield wearing his overalls and a straw hat en route to do chores. When William didn't return to his residence at the end of the day, a search ensued. The search and rescue continued to intensify as days and weeks went on. On August 31st, a searcher pulled the cover off a well near an abandoned cabin on the Fronefield farm, approximately 1/2 mile from the Pitzenbarger residence. Inside the well, searchers saw something odd 25 feet down. A recovery party pulled the deceased and decomposing body of William from the well. The body was intact, but there was a slight discoloration on the right eye. He was wearing the same clothing as when he disappeared, except a straw hat, which was never located. Witnesses stated he was a very reliable man who had a successful farm. The coroner decided not to conduct an autopsy and ruled his death as a drowning. The coroner felt that William looked into the well and hit his head, and the well cover miraculously fell back into place.
All right.
So even just before you even go with what this other researcher on Reddit says, when I read these books, to me, I get to that case and I'm like, this looks like a murder to me, or maybe a suicide. But my first thing, if I was Paulides, I would think, well, this seems more likely that somebody just pushed him in, or who knows, or he fell in,
right?
By accident.
So original sources, let's see, does it say where David got his stuff from? No,
not at least not in the book. It doesn't.
Yeah. So this guy got it from the Delphos Daily Herald. States an inquest was held Monday at the office of prosecuting attorney John I. Miller, with a Dr. R.H. Good acting coroner. Several witnesses were examined. The verdict was suicide. Paulides says Pitzenbarger was a very reliable man, but Paulides fails to mention Pitzenbarger had experienced a long period of ill health. Pitzenbarger was not found right away, and the log house had been previously searched, which means others had access to the well cover after Pitzenbarger's disappearance. Strong searchlights were used to find the body in the dark water. These strong searchlights had not been previously utilized. So yeah, it's possible someone just put the well cover back on, not realizing he was in there while they were looking for him.
Yes, and a lot of this, the suicide determination, because the coroner doesn't say it's a suicide. It sounds more like an accident when you read through the first cover, but then they have an inquest, which is a secondary proceeding and may come at the request of family members because they're like, what, can we really get to the bottom of this?
Right.
I don't know who instigates an inquest into a case, right? It's not a trial. It's it usually is associated with the idea of, I think, I'm not an expert in this, but I think it's associated with can we go back over the details, bring everybody who was involved in and get their testimony.
Right.
And then make a decision. So they have expert witnesses, and then there's a jury that basically decides based on all that data what happened. But they decided suicide at the inquest, but it sounds like the coroner was just thinking it was an accident.
And you made a good point here that why was this included anyway? Because this doesn't fit any of the criteria of the missing 411.
Right. The only weird thing is the cover of the well being in place.
Right.
And you can come up with how that might happen by accident. The coroner decides that the guy opens the well, looks in, accidentally falls in and hits his head or whatever, drowns in there. And then somehow the well cover falls back into place perfectly while he's doing that. But like you said, searchers could have put it back in place, somebody later, because it doesn't happen. It takes a while before they find him in there. He's decomposing by the time they find him.
Right. And what kind of well cover was it? Was it something that you lifted up and it was attached to the well where it could have, a strong wind could have knocked it back down? Or was it something that you fully removed and put on the ground?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking of just like a wooden circle.
That's what I was thinking of, but we don't know because, again, there's no detail there.
We don't, yeah.
It seems weird that the coroner would think that it just happened to close itself unless there was a mechanism that could do that.
Right. So he went missing on the 7th of August. They found his body in the well on the 31st at the end of the month.
Right. And also, it got back to normal after closing of the fair.
What? I missed that part. What?
That's the other article on the page.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. And this is another one from Delphos Daily Herald. But I guess some of these are from the same area, so that would make sense. So the next one is Clarence Clark from 1932. 62 years old, went missing in New York.
Yeah. So in the book, it says the headlines of the Syracuse New York Times, that's the source that Dave has, reads, 5-day search in woods for strangely missing farmer yields no clues. Clarence Clark lived on a Palermo farm with his wife and 83-year-old father, Gold. Clarence and Gold worked the livestock daily and were very close father and son. After Wednesday's dinner, Clarence went into the livestock yard to check on the herd and then went to take a walk around the swamps that surround his property. This was the last time anyone saw him. Sergeant Lawrence Fox of the New York State Police led a 5-day search with over 100 volunteers. The searchers covered the farm, dense woods, and adjacent swamps without finding one clue where Clarence might be. Searchers were mystified at the lack of tracks in the area and the complete lack of any evidence. So the last two bits are what I would say is that's what Paulides thinks makes it mysterious. There's no tracks and no evidence.
So then he says he found the Syracuse Herald from the 17th of October, 1932, gives us some additional information. One explanation offered by the members of the family is that he has been in poor health recently and was subject to fainting spells. Clark's poor health is unfortunately not mentioned in the eastern United States by David, but of course the source is different as well. And then the Mexico Independent, and for anyone who's confused by that, there is a town called Mexico just a little bit northwest of Syracuse.
Oh, this is not a Mexican newspaper?
No.
Okay. I was very confused.
Explains what happened. The body of Clarence Clark, 62-year-old farmer, missing from his home since October 12th, and from more than 100 friends and neighbors searched the entire section, was found in a clump of swale grass on the farm adjacent to the home farm on Sunday afternoon. The body was discovered by the grandson of the missing farmer who saw a foot protruding from the grass. The article also states that Dr. Lee A. Simpson was called. The body had slumped down in the grass as though suffering from a heart attack. Clutched in his hand was a small twig he had broken off in his effort to support himself. The body was removed to an undertaking establishment in Fulton, where an exemption showed the man had died from a stroke of apoplexy.
Yeah. So he walked out into the swamps, left his property. Because if that article is correct, it sounded like they said that he was found adjacent to his property. So he went off his property somehow, and then, maybe he was, I don't know, he's wandering the swamps, and then he has a heart attack.
So what's the date that he disappears, and then they have the search, and then that newspaper has a date which he was found. How long had it been?
He went missing on 10/17/1932.
And he was found, or the newspaper reports he was found, so he was missing from October 12th. And it doesn't say when the body was found. But the article...
What date was the article posted?
October 27th.
Okay.
And I'm looking through the actual article here to see...
So that
missing on the 17th or the 12th?
That newspaper says he went missing on the 12th, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, because in Paulides' book, it's listed as missing on 10/17.
So it is published on the 17th.
Right. Okay. So he didn't have the missing date. He put the date of the article.
Right.
From the Syracuse New York Times.
Yeah. So the Syracuse Herald just says one explanation offered, etc. Let's see if that's down
here. But it says he was found on Sunday or something, right?
Let me scroll back up. He was found Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
So if you figure out when October 27th, 1932 was, it was the Sunday before that. And there's a lot more information in the actual articles he posted.
Yeah. So anybody who goes and reads this from the link that Seriah gets, I do encourage them to click on the newspaper images and read the actual articles.
So October, if this is right, let's see. 1932 calendar. October 27th is a Thursday, and so the Sunday before that is the 23rd.
So he went missing on the 12th, and they found him on the 23rd.
Yeah, that's a pretty long period.
It is a long period.
A week and 4 days. So,
and again, I think what
11 days.
I would go back to what Paulides was focusing on was the lack of tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all those people searched and didn't find him, and then somebody finds him on the next property over.
Yeah. Like over a week later.
Which isn't, that's not paranormal necessarily.
No, none of this is necessarily paranormal.
Lauren Clark's...
Even the weird ones.
Lauren Clark's young son, Dwayne, was in the pasture woodlot looking for young stock when he came upon the body of his grandfather laying in a clearing about a half a mile from Clarence Clark's own home. Hunting parties who have combed the woods since his disappearance have been within a short distance of the place where he was found. But clearly they didn't search it.
Yeah.
It's crazy that, I don't know what it's like living in a swamp, but 11 days, just a couple of days after something dies, it starts smelling pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, here we'd have, there'd be buzzards all over.
But this is October in New York, so maybe.
Yeah, it's in a swamp.
Yeah.
There's no buzzards there.
October in New York could be 90 or it could be 30.
Oh, yeah.
Well, somebody needs to look up the weather in 1932. Let's find out. Need details, people.
All right. Let's see. The next one is George Bell from 1936, 62 years old, and went missing in Winnipeg, Canada.
Yeah. Paulides lists his age of disappearance is 62 years. Says Mr. Bell went missing from his remote farm outside of Winnipeg. He was 5.5 feet tall, weighed 125 pounds. His house and barn were searched, and everything appeared normal at each location. Nothing seemed to be removed from Mr. Bell's property. Mr. Bell was wearing his overalls when he disappeared. A massive search of the adjacent area by the RCMP failed to find any evidence of his whereabouts. And that's all that's in the book.
Yeah, and it doesn't say
so
where
again,
he
this is it doesn't give an indication of what source he had. It seems like it's so few on details that it seems more like a missing persons poster.
Yeah, it seems like a public announcement sort of police report.
Here's how tall he is. Here's how much he weighs. Here's what he was wearing. We don't know where he is. That's all that you get.
So under original sources, he says the headline in the Winnipeg Tribune of September 2nd, 1936 reads, "Missing farmer returns after 4 days in the bush. Joking remark by harvester causes nervous fear hid from searchers. The newspaper goes on to say that Bell was very nervous and is being kept from strangers, but gave an explanation of his disappearance to his brother Frank. Mr. Bell had been in poor health for some time. This seems like a common thread here. According to the story, he told his brother one of the harvesters had been teasing him while they worked together Friday afternoon. A joking remark weighed on his mind and made him so afraid that he wandered off into the bush to escape. A fear overcame me, he said.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sorry, a fear came over me, but down here it says fear came on me.
Right. And then later the searchers were out looking for him, and he claims that he heard the searchers and got more afraid and ran from them.
For 4 days, he stayed in the thick bush nearby, unable to force himself to return, and so worried that when he saw a line of men, the searchers, he hid from them. Most of the time, he slept. He had no food with him, but owing to a stomach ailment, has been forced to eat very lightly for some time and did not notice hunger. On Tuesday, the effects of his fright began to wear off, but it was only by a great effort that he was able to force himself to return today, and he is described as still very nervous. He is being cared for by his brothers, who had not known until his return of the remark made by the strange harvester, which caused the disappearance.
The strange harvester.
Yes, the strange harvester.
Now, this is not a machine.
Right.
Okay, this is a person that's made the comment, not a harvester.
So basically the story there is that he was working with some people and somebody teased him.
Yeah, or maybe even jokingly threatened him or something, I would think.
Yeah. And then he runs off and hides from everybody for 4 days and is unable to overcome his fear and he doesn't eat anything either. And they're like, well, that's okay because he doesn't eat anything anyway.
Right.
And then he comes out of the woods eventually and he's still super nervous and they have him in the hospital and they're keeping him away from all strangers. It sounds like, I don't know.
He's 62 years old.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he has something not quite right.
Maybe a little dementia.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, not like I understand why David put it in there, but doesn't really count.
Well, I don't. I would say for sure that in the book, this case has so few details that I don't think it should be in there at all.
True. Yeah, because what were the things he was saying? He was looking for berry picking.
Well, this particular section of the book is focusing on farmers who disappear without a trace, right? So that's why this is in there. The guy was farming.
Okay.
And he vanished. And at least according to David's sources, which seems like a missing persons poster or something like it, maybe a short newspaper article before the guy was found. Dave he didn't know that the person had been found later.
Yeah.
Or he didn't include it on purpose, which is the implication of this post on Reddit.
Well, for years, people have been telling me that David is leaving out information. But nobody has been able to back that up. Because I have said to people, good, show me. Don't just say it. Show me the evidence. And they'll, like someone said, oh, he made up the thing about the other family in the Dennis Martin case, seeing the thing at the top of the woods or the top of the cliff or whatever, holding a package. And then I did a newspaper search and found the original newspaper that had it in there. And I'm like, nope, he didn't make that up. It's right here from whatever year it was.
Yeah.
So no one's ever been able to show me that he's leaving stuff out. I mean, he's not going to, even with today's resources, you're not going to get everything. You're still going to miss stuff.
It would be tough to prove he's doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
So.
He definitely sells it as a bigger mystery than I think it is. Like I said, I think a lot of these are not that mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
But he has definitely uncovered that the national parks were not really telling people when people went missing. There was no database, which there definitely should have been. But and that was probably to not scare people off from coming to the parks.
Right. Well, it'll make a certain kind of person want to go.
Yeah.
Like
well,
me.
that's a good point. And he has raised awareness that there are some of these very strange cases, and that to me this says, well, this ties in with what ancient people thought about fairy lore and stuff like that. These ancient legends.
Yes.
Right. So is this the one we just
again? I'll just say that this whole section, when I went through this section of the book to read up on on what Paulides had in the book to compare it to what the person posted on their Reddit post, I was just like, oh yeah, Like there's multiple sections like this in the book where there's just a few pages where every case is a couple of paragraphs, and you're like, all right, I can't even tell if this is supposed to be mysterious or not.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, the next one is Jewel Hinrichsen and Judd McWilliams from 1948. 35 years old and 82 years old went missing in Montana.
This is the one from North America and Beyond. I don't have that book with me.
Okay. It says Jewel Hendrickson was an employee at the ranch near Lewiston, Montana. David Paulides explains what happens next. On September 23rd, 1948, in the late afternoon, Jewel went for a walk around the property and never came back. Jewel was 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed 120 pounds. She was last seen wearing blue slacks, a blouse, and tennis shoes. An extensive search by ranchers and the county sheriff's office failed to find Jewel, and I could not find any articles confirming she was found. And again, right there, he's saying you can't find any articles. So again, you might be very dead on with the technology, and the amount of stuff that's out there has changed significantly in the last 20 or 10 years.
Yeah, or even even just the way he does his research. He's old school, like you can tell by looking at his website.
That's true. Judd McWilliams was an 82-year-old rancher who went missing on September 15th, 1948. He writes, Davis Paulides, so he got his name wrong, but writes, a thorough search of the area failed to find any evidence of what happened to the 82-year-old rancher. A long-term archival search was completed without finding any resolution to the disappearance of Judd. Paulides goes on to speculate if a typical predator had attacked Judd, there would have been hair, clothing, and blood on the scene. It almost appears as if Judd was snatched and forced to drop the firearm. It is also an unusual coincidence that Judd's rifle was found in an area of downed logs, a region where missing children are often found. So from the original sources, the Great Falls Tribune states that Jewel Hinrichsen, 35, reported missing from Lewiston today, is at her father's home in Lower Sun River Community. The sheriff's office was notified here Saturday. Judd McWilliams was found dead 6 days later in 1954. Sheriff Fred Buckner and McWilliams became lost. McWilliams became lost and wandered till he died of exhaustion.
Yeah, there you go. Dying of exhaustion is another common theme in the books.
Well, yeah, but you also got to remember this guy was, 79?
Yep.
No, was that it? 35 and 82, it says.
82.
So, yeah. The actual newspapers say the remains of a Lewiston man missing since September 1948 were found yesterday near Grass Range. Authorities identified the bones as those of Judd McWilliams. Sheriff Fred Buckner said he apparently became lost and wandered till he died of exhaustion.
Yeah, how can they know that? They can't.
Well, I would think
that's
if there's
speculation.
It's speculation, but I would think it was one of those things where, there's nothing wrong with him, but he probably just
bones.
Huh?
There's nothing wrong with his bones.
Right. Like it's not. He hasn't been torn apart. He hasn't been, nothing.
Yeah.
No obvious head injuries or something like that.
Yeah.
He could have had a heart attack.
Right.
Leroy Williams from 1951. 64 years old, went missing in Iowa.
Yes. So now we're back to Eastern United States book.
Yes.
Same page. This is right after the Mr. Bell case.
So this is still farmers?
Yeah. And it's still like one or two paragraphs. So Leroy Williams, huh?
All 13 of these are farmers.
Okay. 64 years old. Williams was living on a farm 3.5 miles outside of Ackworth. Leroy was feeding stock and doing chores when he disappeared after he went outside in a heavy snowstorm. When Williams failed to return to the residence, authorities were called. Police brought bloodhounds that searched for hours and found no trace of the farmer. Sheriff Jack Taylor asked for volunteers to arrive at the farm and assist. Searches did continue, and no clue as to Leroy's whereabouts could be found.
So the Daily Times from 16th of March, 1951 stated, it is feared Williams, who suffered from a heart ailment, might have had a heart attack and fallen in the snow. Leroy Williams' body was found 11 days after he went missing, contrary to the information presented in the Eastern United States. But again, that could be because he just didn't have access to it.
I wonder how that's the other question is, like, if you're doing this kind of research and you don't have a way to just search for the name of the person through hundreds and hundreds of newspapers that may not be from the same town.
Yeah.
Or might be a different newspaper in the same town that you don't even know exists because it doesn't exist anymore because this was 1951.
Or it might not have been archived at that point.
Right. So the question is how far out from the day of disappearance, do you keep looking through articles to see, did they ever say, oh, we found him?
Right.
So if you do it if you're like, okay, we'll look 5, 6 days out, a week out, and you find another article that says that they quit searching because they hit, and then you're going to miss something that comes out 2 weeks later saying, oh, his body was found and he was dead.
No, and I think you're right. I think it's just the limits of the technology when he was writing these books. This does not feel like he was leaving out information or intentionally making it more mysterious.
Yeah.
This feels like he just didn't have access to this info.
It feels to me like he found initial articles talking about the disappearance, but didn't uncover in every case the articles that just talked about them being found.
Right.
The other question is how many cases like that did he find? And he say, oh, okay, 5 days later they found the body and he was shot in the head.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other question I have is this researcher that's doing this stuff, how many articles has he researched that he didn't find anything that was left out?
Well, that's why I was asking how many in between these were there, because that would imply if he didn't write about it,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, he should also write about the ones that he also looked into that couldn't find any additional data or how many did he look into that he couldn't find at least all of the data that Paulides found.
Right.
Or he found a bunch of other newspaper articles and they all basically said the same stuff that Paulides had in the book.
That's what I mean. It's like, so to be fair, the guy should produce all of his research saying like, yeah, I looked into all these articles and these were all good, and here's some that were not.
Yeah.
So the next one is John Sweet, 48 years old, went missing in Illinois in 1953.
Okay, yeah, so we've skipped one now.
Okay.
We skipped Ralph Stutzman is the next case in the book, but he goes to John Sweet, which is after that. Illinois, age of disappearance, Paulides says is unknown. Does the researcher have his age?
48.
Yeah. So clearly he found different sources. John Sweet had a busy day when he disappeared, Paulides says. He went into town, sold a load of corn, bought groceries in Harrisburg, and returned home. He came into the house, left the groceries and his cash, changed clothes, went to the back of his barn to work on a tractor. He also told his wife that he was going to repair a pig pen that had become damaged somehow and retrieve several of his pigs that had wandered. And this was the last time anyone saw John. Relatives notified authorities. 75 different local farmers arrived on their tractors to search. Nothing was found. Oil marks were found. So that's weird. It says nothing was found. And it says oil marks were found on a barbed wire fence leading away from the property, indicating that John may have worked on the tractor and then gone over the fence for some reason. John was not a small man. At 240 pounds, he would not have wandered far without the tractor. An intensive search failed to find any evidence as to what happened to John Sweet. That's the end of what's in the book.
Well, 240 pounds at 48 years old.
Yeah, maybe he's just like a super strapping dude, right?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't...
He could have been uber buff.
I mean, that's an assumption that he wouldn't wander far without a tractor. I mean, if he's a farmer, he's probably not in terrible shape.
Listen, man, I'm a farmer. I never go anywhere without my tractor.
All right, so he found... Sweet's body was found on November 11th. He went missing on October 22nd. The Daily Register from November 12th, 1953 states... All indications that death was of natural causes, and both Sheriffs Paul Spangler and Coroner Elmer Gibbons were of that opinion. Sweet was found in a field by hunter Artie Williams. Williams brought neighbor Mr. Mosier to the scene, and Mr. Mosier confirmed Sweet was wearing the same clothes as the day he went missing. Sweet still had his pipe in his mouth, and Sheriff Spangler said there was no sign of struggle or violence on the body. John, who was overweight, was suffering from high blood pressure, and it is believed that he died from a heart attack while chasing down his hogs.
Ah, okay.
An autopsy was performed at the Walter Jackson Funeral Home and was confirmed Sweet died of natural causes.
Still had his pipe in his mouth.
Yeah.
That's hardcore right there. Don't drop the pipe even during a heart attack.
My grandfather smoked a pipe, and I rarely saw him without it pretty much indented into his mouth.
Nice.
Like, I'm pretty sure his lip dipped down where the pipe normally went. All right, I think we got, two more. So let's get through these because we're running low on time.
Mm-hmm.
Louis Blair, 1956, 26 years old, went missing in Saskatchewan, Canada.
In the book, it's listed as Provost, Alberta.
Okay.
But yes, Louis Blair. age disappearance 26. Blair was a bachelor who maintained a large wheat field on his farm just 10 miles south of the Saskatoon border and 12 miles north of Provost. The area is dotted with hundreds of small lakes and rivers. On Sunday, August 5th, Blair left his house early in the morning and headed into his field, and he was never seen again. Regional RCMP completed a 3-day search by 150 men and canines without finding a trace of the man.
And, you read that, and I think that does sound weird.
And I would say that you got here the information. It was a 3-day search.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
If Paulides doesn't find information after the search that he was found, and it's also RCMP in Canada, in rural Canada, it's probably harder to search for stuff there. But so what is the Reddit guy have to say?
So the leader post states, Lewis Blair, a 26-year-old farmer missing for 8 days, has been found at Rutland, Saskatchewan. Douglas Carter, a former resident of the Provost area, 160 miles southeast of Edmonton, notified police Sunday night that he had spotted the missing farmer in Rutland. Carter reported that Blair was unaware of the search by posse, aircraft, and dog had sought employment on a farm after running out of money at Unity. While on his way to visit his uncle in Regina... Oh, I'm sorry. This is
the one where the basically the upshot is the guy said he didn't go missing, he was just broke.
Yes.
He tried to walk somewhere.
Yeah. The way it's written, I stopped where I shouldn't have stopped. He wasn't aware of the search and had sought employment on a farm after running out of money at Unity, Saskatchewan, while on his way to visit an uncle, or I'm guessing that's supposed to be an uncle at Regina. RCMP said Blair would return home to visit his anxious parents. It appears Blair was not truly missing. He was just low on money.
Yeah. Nevertheless, RCMP did a 3-day search with 150 men and dogs without finding any trace of him.
Right.
So that's interesting.
See, that's a good indication right there. Like, I bet in a lot of these cases, when they're grown, when they're adults, when there's like a major search and of the area and they can't go, they just don't know what the person actually did.
Yeah,
that's right.
They don't, it's thought, well, they went hiking on this trail and then they search all over the place and all over the mountain and then the next mountain. It's like, well, maybe they didn't actually know what they did, which way.
Yeah, he didn't go for a hike. He tried to walk to his uncle's or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the last one is Anthony Holland from 2009. 51 years old, went missing in Oklahoma. Now, this one's not so much relying on old accounts, so let's see what David has to say about this one.
Okay, and we've skipped another case here, too.
Okay.
So, and this is the last, but this Anthony Holland is the last case of this farmers section.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the book, it says age of disappearance 51 years. Holland owned an 80-acre ranch southeast of Cordell, Oklahoma. He returned home after attending a gun show and then left again to check on his ranch. He never returned. His truck was found 1 mile from Vanderwerk Lake near a remote section of the ranch. His keys and wallet were in the truck. His cell phone was found on the ground a short distance from the truck. Tracker dogs were brought to the truck but were unable to locate any scent and could not track. The area has a very interesting landscape. There are no fewer than 35 bodies of water within 5 miles of downtown. The most notable lakes and dams are the Boggy Creek and Calvary Creek watershed and Oak No Name Reservoir. The area to the west of Cordell is quite swampy, while to the east is mostly farms. The area where Anthony disappeared has many farms and several scatterings of large bodies of water. There are no cities of similar size as Cordell for 15 miles in any direction. Paulides says, I know you can exclude robbery as a motive, as his keys and wallet were clearly visible inside the truck. Extensive searches were made of the area without developing any evidence of where Anthony may have gone.
And so News9.com from 2011 states, so again, he went missing in 2009, and the book was printed in 2011.
Right. So the information that the Reddit author puts in here is basically post-publication.
Yes, because it
seems like, yeah.
Yeah, News9.com from 2011 states, Anthony Holland, 51, disappeared after running an errand June 22nd, 2009, and was never heard from or seen again. Remains were found on Holland's property on March 29th that the state medical examiner's office was able to positively identify as the remains of Holland's. The medical examiner's office rules Holland died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head.
Yeah. So after David published the book, he was found and that information came out. That they decided after looking at his bones, because he'd been missing for years at that point, that he had shot himself.
Yes.
So there could have been other other things that help determine that, like what.
Well, if he shot himself, there should be a gun on the ground.
Well,
Right.
that, but also like what what was in his cell phone, like what recently had happened to him, which might have been in police reports, but never publicized.
So I mean, and there is a big jump there from 1956 to 2009. Yeah. Both would be reasonable for him not to have had access in 2009 to this information.
Yeah. Or even 2010 when he's probably finishing up the last plates of the book.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That's what I meant. 2011. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it allows us to cut the stuff up. But as you said, a lot of the comments and stuff were basically like, oh, the first one, thank you for exposing the deception in Paulides reports of the so-called missing 411 cases.
Yeah. The comments are, I'll just say, they're bad. There are a couple of people that are like, well, this is good. Like, we need to winnow these cases out. But the vast majority of the comments are like, yeah, David's a total fraud.
And this is what I've wanted somebody to do since I first read the books, is like, go back and have someone else put eyes on these cases.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, David.
Yeah, so I hope the guy does it for everyone. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And maybe in the process, he'll find others.
And it would be great, like Kyle said, if he would say, like, well, this case, as he's going through, he's like, this case, I found all the same information as David and nothing else.
Yeah.
Or I couldn't find anything at all, or whatever,
Yeah, or even, you could take it by that the cases that he skips on the same page, probably he looked into.
Yeah.
And found nothing.
Probably just didn't find anything more, so
that was the implication I got, because
if he would state that.
Yeah.
Like if, I'm going in sequence, here's my process. And if I skip a case, it's because I didn't find anything different.
Yeah. So basically we went from page 28 to page 33 in the book.
Yeah.
Through those cases. They're all extremely short. They're all basically in a row, except for the random one that researcher included from North America and beyond, which wondering.
May have been the first one he looked into.
It could be. Yeah.
And that leaves us with, 2 or 3 cases that are still unsolved.
Yeah, or that we don't have any more information, but are still just as bare of information in the book as the rest of those. So you're just like, I never thought that those were in, except for a couple of the weird, there's a few weird things, like the guy's got sand in his mouth and a broken neck, but they think he got struck by lightning.
Yeah.
That one's weird. And then the new information that this researcher has found, where you're like, oh, he was also doused in kerosene. And you're like, what? That's even more strange. It doesn't necessarily make it missing 411 or
it's just
paranormal.
Bizarre.
It's just bizarre.
And,
here's
and probably would be less bizarre if we watched it happen. We'd just be like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Then the other one that's still strange to me is the guy who had temporary dementia.
Yeah.
And just walks up to Mount Vernon and back, and he's like, oh, sorry, I just completely lost my mind there for a couple of days. I'm totally fine and normal now. That's weird and is Fae-like.
Yes. Yes, that's definitely Fae-like.
And matches other cases where they find people alive after having gone missing. No one can track them. No one can figure out where they went. And then they return alive and dazed.
Yeah.
Described as in a daze, in a trance.
So we have.
But this was like 1948 or whatever. So they're just like, he had a temporary dementia.
Right.
Which is just another way of saying a daze.
So we probably have time to squeeze one more in here. This one came from the Missing 411 discussion group. Missing Hunter, the very unusual 1953 Charles Warner case. And he says...
Which book?
I don't know. Let's see.
That's not helpful, Seriah.
North America and Beyond.
Okay, I don't have that one with me.
Charles Warner was an elk hunter who went missing in a rugged part of Oregon in 1953. Near the Washington border. David Paulides uses the word unusual to describe the case. Why is it unusual? Because Charles Warner walked into the wilderness from his vehicle. Yes, that is truly cutting-edge research. I'm quoting this. That's not a comment from me. Paulides
That's
writes...
what I mean. You can get the implication from the way that...
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Paulides writes, considering that Charles walked into the wilderness from his vehicle and was not camped in the woods, makes this case unusual. Mr. Warner was limited to the distance from the roadway he could travel, based on the confirmed observation made by his hunting partner. The search parameters was set in a region near the hunter's vehicle. He should have been found. So here he has his deconstruction of this. He says, David Paulides claims the organized search was terminated on November 29th and that Charles Warner was never found. But Warner's body was found on November 28th, the day before Paulides says the search was called off. The Bend Bulletin from the 30th of November 1953 states, Warner's body was found Saturday slumped under a tree. Searchers reported that he apparently suffered a heart attack. 75 to 100 men, refusing to give up the search, combed the Odessa Springs area near Tollgate in a last-ditch effort to find Warner, missing since November 21st. 60 of the searchers were from Sisters. For the second time, members of the search party Friday voted to call off the hunt, but fellow townsmen from the Sisters refused to quit and renewed the search Saturday. William M. Curtis, state fire warden from La Grande, who directed the hunt, was discoverer of Warren's body. So not only did the search efforts not end, it was also determined Charles Warner had died from a heart attack. But again, it depends where David was pulling the information from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not unheard of that, a news story is going to have wrong dates in it.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we've seen that tonight already a couple of times.
Yeah, and that was another thing I noticed in the comments of people who were like, newspapers get stuff wrong too. So it's it's hard to say. The question is like, can you look up Paulides' so when he lists his sources, like for example, I would be interested to look up the articles or the newspapers that he says he got his information from, and then see like if I read that, did he leave stuff out that would make it less mysterious? That would imply more that he was intentionally defrauding people. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. The problem, the fact that he doesn't cite his sources is problematic as well.
Yeah, well, he puts them in a lot of the cases. Sometimes he just doesn't list it, but a lot of times he'll start out with like in this newspaper or I got this from this document.
Right. Yeah. But why not do it for everything?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, honestly, when I read the books, to me, they needed some serious proofreading.
Yeah. Like I go to the next page in here, and it's Jack Pike from Manitoba, 5 years old, disappeared. Then he starts out with, he's like, here's the information from an interview to the Leader Post, right, from his mother. So he gives that information. Then there's one from Minnesota. Let's see, does he list? I gotta have to screen these really fast, but he does. Yeah, okay. Newspaper articles were found on the cause of death, which to me, when you're reading it, if you're, like one of the things I got implications from this when he was like, I couldn't find a coroner's report or a cause of death on this. He's not saying that makes it mysterious.
Right.
He's just saying, for whatever reason, the information on why he died or what they decided he died from is not available.
Yeah.
So
he has done, oh man, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 20.
Anyway, I'm grateful for this. Like, I don't like the guy's negative tone, and I definitely don't like the negative tone of the commentary, but it's inspired me, like I said at the beginning of the show, for future shows, because I like to go through these books and single out certain cases that Paulides has never talked about that I also find really strange.
So
go ahead.
He's done 54 cases.
Okay.
Ranging.
Yeah, I'll have to read through them all.
Ranging from 1891 to 2021.
All right.
So we'll have to do another show and cover some more.
Yeah. Just let me know which ones they are so I can read them first.
Well, we can go through to the deconstruction list next time, perhaps, because he's sticky to list of missing 411 deconstructions where he's taken them apart and shown what what does he have here? No, it doesn't go all the way across. Like the first one, found dead, lost in the woods, found alive, lost in the woods, where I think David normally has them listed as missing.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but I think you're right. I mean, I do not see anything that contradicts the idea that David was working with less information because of when he was doing it.
Right. So one way to check is, for that is to research cases from much newer books where these kinds of resources are more accessible. So like one of the most recent books he's released, can you go through and find out, oh, wow, he missed a whole bunch of stuff on this one too, and it's easier to find that stuff. It's possible. It just depends on how he does his research.
Right. So. Right. And
well, look, I think your first point about archive dates is really important. I pulled up a couple of newspaper archive I was looking for what they write about them, and a couple of places I found have a little blurb on the main page. Like this is the Pennsylvania Newspaper Archive. They say newspaper titles and holdings will continue to be added as they become available from all 67 counties, stretching back to our colonial roots to the present.
Right.
So it's like
They're still doing
happening.
it. Yeah.
And this is another one from the University of Oregon, Historic Oregon Newspapers. Says you can search and access, blah, blah, blah. These newspapers have that search and access historic Oregon newspapers that have been digitized as part of the Oregon Digital Newspaper Program. This full-text searchable database contains almost 2 million pages from Oregon newspapers dated from 1846 to 2021, and we are continually adding new titles.
Right.
So it's like
this kind of archival work is very recent.
You could do research on one story, and then a month later, there might be new articles about that story that just show up in newspaper archives that you would have no idea.
Yeah. Yep.
That you needed to go back and check.
So even with all this, I have yet to have anyone prove to me that David is leaving out info.
Well, he's leaving it out, but
because he didn't have access to it.
Yeah.
And like I said at the beginning, it's unreasonable. It's unreasonable to think he could go back and research every case.
Right. Because by the time you get to the end, you got to do it again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
yeah.
But this has been my complaint about the missing 411 subject from the beginning. I have trouble with really getting into it just because of the fact that there's so much missing data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we know that there's missing
We know
data.
that it's there. We know that it's missing. And I've always just been like, man, some of these, you might be able to find more newspaper articles and stuff, but like they're still, even if you find more and more information, there's still going to be questions that it's like, man, I wish the investigator would have asked this question to that person.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple of cases that had the person not been found, they would have looked like a very typical missing 411 case. And we've talked about them on the show.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it's only because the person was found and could say what happened that you go, oh, well, now it makes sense. But had that person not been found, it would have been like, well, what happened? They just disappeared. They knew the area well. Their dog was found, and they were never found. Well, that's weird. That fits the paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, they survived and were okay. Or like someone tried to kill me and rape me.
Yeah.
In that particular case,
Sasquatch tried to kill me and rape me. That's when it gets fun. Right.
All right. Do you guys stick around for a Patreon?
Sure.
And people can find you where?
brothersoftheserpent.com has everything related to the podcast, and the podcast can be found anywhere podcasts can be found.
All right. Thank you for doing this one with me, and we'll have to pursue some more in the future.
All right.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Rock and roll.
I would like to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. As we go into our 10th year, it is all of you that help keep this going, and I would especially like to give a shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more: Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Stephen St. George, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Christine, The 100th Monkey Project, a blue second gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, land of the crazy and communicable, Amber Hall, Chris Ernst, Chris Johnson, Craig Cicernos, Craig Parmenter, Crystal Ann Compton, David Moore, Denise Sarek, Diane B., Duffy Dowder, Edu Camahort, Empty K, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, Matthew Sproul, Denise Sarek, James Lattimore, Joanna Rojas, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Linz Jackson K., Leanne Cherry, Luke Osborne, Mark Bowley, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Roger Gonzalez, Sam Sharon, Stone Wilderness, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, 36 Dingo, Thunderboy, Timothy Castaneda, Tyler Glimstead, Vincent Treewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Martinez Saint, and Stephen D. I thank you all so very much, and a special shout out to Vincent Treewell, who does our recaps every week and does a fantastic job. Thank you all. I hope you enjoyed that exploration of the missing 411 stuff. There's a lot more to come, and in our Patreon segment, we explore some other cases and actually live Google them as we're recording, and found some very interesting things. So if you're a patron, you'll get that very soon. If If you want to become a patron, just go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month, and you get extra content all month long. And there was a little incident that happened after we got done recording, and I will put that at the end of the Patreon segment as well. It's just kind of weird. Anyway, and I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.